I'm Alan Kogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations.
The pump in the background ain't going anywhere, but
that's fine.
It's pretty monotone, and you can filter it out.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thanks for having me here at Few Spirits in Chicagoland, Evanston, right?
Yeah, good to have you here.
Yeah, we went in Denver, and you invited me out. I wanted to come talk to you guys. I've only had a couple of your products, and I mean, obviously, I'm born and raised in Milwaukee, so I mean, go Packers and Brewers and all that good stuff. As you wear a Chicago Cubs hat, you'll kick me out soon.
Yeah, go to the game in a little bit. It's all good.
But tell me about yourself and how you got into this business.
Well, I'm Paul. I'm the founder and distiller here at Few. I got into the business because it seemed like a good idea.
It's a good answer.
It just seemed like a good idea. I mean, I also had a little bit of personal motivation and all sorts of other stuff. But on the two kind of strands, two kind of fronts. So one, I have an intense and complete and pathological hatred of any sort of authority. So I'm unable to work for somebody else. Which means I really kind of have to be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And so, pretty severe personality flaw, but, I'm old and I don't care anymore. So that's kind of where it goes. At the same time, I like to create and I like to make and I like to do something new.
Yeah.
So, the opportunity to work and do a creative field like making whiskey was fantastic and really kind of spoke to me. At the same time, when I was working on the basic idea, I guess, my grandfather died. That was relevant because prior to World War II, his family had owned a major brewery in what's now the Czech Republic.
Wow. If
you are up on your world history, you may recall that in 1939, the Nazis invaded. It was Czechoslovakia then. And they confiscated the family brewery and murdered the entire family in the camps, with the exception of my grandfather.
Wow.
And so, although Grandpa survived the war, he spent the rest of his life trying to get the brewery back, but never did. And then when he passed, it kind of struck me that all of that history and legacy and kind of what our family has done in the past was gone forever unless I do something about it. And so, kind of combined that with an inability to work for somebody else and this desire to create and make art daily. It all just kind of rolled up into one. And like I said, it kind of seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. Was there any leftover recipes or things from the brewery that your family was able to keep?
I made the beer recipe once, turned it into whiskey, and then we'll never make it again, never sell it. We never sold it. It was only gifts to people that I care about. And then my uncle and I are going to we're going to grab 3 bottles. And then we're going to go to my grandpa's grave and I'm going to drink a bottle. My uncle's going to drink a bottle. Grandpa's going to drink a bottle. And
I love that.
That'll kind of be our moment to share with him.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Were you always a whiskey guy? Was like a distiller distilling? Was it kind of like a calling card or?
I've always been a little bit of a predilection for beverage alcohol, if you will. But as far as distilling, obviously that's a felony, so I've never done that prior to having a license.
Fair enough. Did you any home brewing just to get into the whole thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I made beer at home for 20 years, and I'm a competent home brewer. I don't think of anything great,
sure,
especially compared to where a lot of the home brewers are these days. Kind of back when I was home brewing, it was certainly established, but not not to the degree it is today where, I've got a friend who's got it's probably a $30,000 homebrew setup in his basement. And, when I was home brewing, we were kind of scrimping and saving for, trying to get to a $40 glass carboy. So it's a different level these days than when I ever did. And, like I said, give me a little bit of credit and call me a competent home brewer, although that's probably generous.
Well, now you're a competent distiller.
No, I'm a lot better at distilling than I'm making beer.
Was that a learned process? Did you get into the business and learned a lot on the way, or you're probably still learning?
Yeah, I mean, you always learn, and certainly at Few we get better each and every day.
Sure.
Back when we started, we wanted to get 1% better a day. You can't really do that anymore. But if we can get 1% better a month, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
We're always trying to figure out, new and better ways to do stuff. But first off, for quality, always.
Yeah.
Quality is obviously the guiding light. And our entire mission is to make the best whiskey on the planet, which is a little bit of a impossibility because I don't really think there is such a thing as the best whiskey on the planet.
Sure.
But that's our goal.
Yeah. I love it. Are you out to make, like, I'm sure when you started, you had an idea in mind of what you liked, what your flavor profile was, maybe people who work for you, what they like. Mm-hmm. Have you been able to expand out to, we're going to make stuff that, I don't really like, but the market wants it?
Oh, I would never make anything I don't like.
I've heard that a lot from craft distilleries, which I like to hear.
Yeah. Because if I don't like it, I'm not going to make it.
Right.
I've made stuff I don't like before, but it always was I thought it was a good idea, and then it turns out I don't like it. So, okay.
Yeah.
It would never in a million years cross my mind to make something I don't like just because of money. I didn't get into this to make money.
Sure. When you first started, were you just doing everything yourself? Any sourcing? Were you any white spirits, or how'd that go out?
Yeah, we've never sourced a single drop.
Cool.
And never will as long as I'm around. So we made gin for a while. We had a lightly aged white whiskey, if you will.
Sure.
But fundamentally, we've always been a whiskey distillery at our core. And so, how do we do it? I don't know, one day at a time, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of the entrepreneurial way. You figure out a way to get it done. And the whole time you're trying to get better and better and better and learn and get better. And, I think our whiskeys speak for themselves at this point. We just got named world's best whiskey. We've got all the awards, all the acclaim.
Yep.
So I think kind of all that hard work is starting to really pay off as far as the, critics go.
Yeah. Well, I told a couple of friends and family that I was coming to talk to you, and they're like, we know that brand. I've had that on my shelf before.
Nice.
So it's awesome that you're well known. And I've only had one of your bottles on my shelf before, and I don't see it often. I live in Virginia now. So it's not, I don't know if you guys have distribution everywhere, but.
Yeah, we're 50 states.
Are you okay?
Virginia's always a tough one because of ABC.
They're weird. They are weird, especially coming from Wisconsin, where I can buy Everclear to Walmart.
Right.
And then moving to Virginia, and it's just like, good luck finding anything that's not Virginia made or Jack Daniels.
Yeah, Virginia's a great market.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit difficult, and the unintended consequences of state control are perhaps a little bit lower selection, if you will.
Right. One of the things I love about, in this business, in this industry that you and I have both kind of played in, I mean, you more than me. I'm just kind of doing some fun media stuff and tasting samples, not making it. But you guys are doing the hard work, putting the blood, sweat, and tears, the TLC, and you're making a good product. I'm sure the best part of your job is the experimentation and creating the thing, like you said earlier. I'm sure. What does that mean to you to be able to create something and then sell it in the market and then respond really well?
I think that's definitely what it's all about, is that creation. Certainly there's advantages to having whiskey be what you dedicate your life to.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's that creation and, waking up in the morning and having an actual product that you're sharing with people that they really enjoy. These are really cool things. Like, whiskey at its best brings people together. The number of times I've talked to people that tell me about the night they had with more bottles and 9 months later they had a baby. I talked to another guy this one time who had been estranged from his father for 30 years. He tasted my rye whiskey and for whatever reason decided, hey, my dad would like this. And so he called him up, and 7 days later, a father and son reconnected over a bottle of my whiskey.
That's cool.
No, I mean, it could have been anybody's whiskey, right?
Yeah.
But it was mine.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff I think is really cool about this business is people are excited about what you make and they want to be a part of it and they want to talk about it and they want to share it with their friends. And, you share a pour with a celebration and you share a pour in commiseration. And it's really kind of it's really the glue for an awful lot of people that you celebrate and commiserate with. But, whiskey brings people together. And I think that's really cool to be a part of.
Absolutely. And I think one of the cool things too about, especially the craft industry, you have room to play. You can kind of do what you want. And like you said, you don't have a boss above you. You are your own boss. So if you decide you want to make something kind of wazoo wild or put something in a barrel that no one's ever done before, you could do that. Have there been any fun experimentations that have either panned out or not panned out that you're like, this is awesome, or it was really fun but didn't work out?
We've had a lot of stuff we've done that has turned out great, and we've had a lot of stuff that we've done that turned out disastrous, and that's kind of okay.
Yeah.
Certainly when at this point, it's a lot harder to just put anything in a barrel because, we've been able to grow a little bit. But back in the day, like we just kind of had a rule where everybody was effectively required to make their own whiskey twice a year.
Sure.
And the only rule on how to decide what to do was, is it going to be fun?
Right.
Don't worry about if it's commercial or not. Worry about is it fun? And so when you have a rule like that, you end up with a fair amount of disasters, but they're always fun.
Oh yeah. Creative destruction.
Yeah.
What's it like distilling in Chicago, in the Chicago area? Is Chicago and Illinois, I don't know how their laws are. Every state I've encountered is different and weird.
Certainly operating a distillery in Illinois has its own share of unique challenges. Illinois has some amazing policies where Illinois is flush with tax revenue and full employment. And so you like to make sure that every other state takes advantage of the fact that we're so flush with cash and jobs. So we make sure that you can't have distilleries that grow here. And so it's really nice that we're able to contribute to the economic growth of a lot of other states by making sure that nobody can thrive with the business here in Illinois.
Yeah.
It's a really awesome opportunity for those of us who are trying to thrive with the business here in Illinois and have the government tell us, no, you need to go somewhere else. But that's just the kind of the joy of being here. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if are you sourcing grains and things from local as best you can, or how does that work?
Yeah, we get everything from as close to home as we can. Given the state's approach to our business, we try to source as much grain as we can from Wisconsin and Indiana, Michigan, Iowa.
Yeah.
We do our best to make sure that we're supporting the other states that Illinois has made it their policy to support.
Yeah.
And so we get everything from as close to home as we can, with probably a little bit of a focus on Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Iowa.
I mean, yeah, Midwest is Midwest. It's a good community.
Yeah. Sitting here in the breadbasket of effectively the world.
Right.
We use all grains as close to home as we can get, but that's not really making us a saint. That just means we don't have to ship it as far, because the best grains in the world are growing right here.
Yep. I agree. I know there's a lot of people I've talked to on the East and West Coast that like they want to try to get most of their stuff from where they are, because it's nice to say, I get my stuff from a farmer down the street. But as far as pricing and the amount that comes from the Midwest, it's just easier to go that route.
Yeah.
But tell me about the product. I know you guys focus on whiskey. Is it just bourbon and rye? Are you going in the single malt game because everyone's blowing up there? Or
yeah, I mean, we make primarily what we make is bourbon and rye.
Yeah.
We make an American single malt. I'm one of the founding members of the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission.
That's right.
I wrote the rules for what American single malt is. But certainly by far, most of what we make is going to be bourbon and rye.
So now that you said that, I got to ask you, there's a little debate going on that people I've talked to of what American single malt means. And the rule is barley, 100% barley. There are people who I've talked to who said, well, it should be 100% malted anything. Is that up in the air right now, or what? Because I didn't think so. And yet Congress hasn't voted on to make that a category yet. Or is that?
Well, it'll be a TTB, not Congress.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Fundamentally,
I say the government.
Those of us who actually make whiskey believe there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a malted rye or malted corn or malted wheat.
Yeah,
everybody's literally 125% in favor of it. But the customer who's purchasing the products thinks that single malt means barley
because of Scotch.
And you can argue that that's fair. You can argue that it's unfair. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the drinking consumer believes that malt means barley.
Yep.
And the reason why we put in rules is to try to help make sure the consumer gets what they expect.
Right.
So there's like single malt commission. Hell, most of the people make malted rye or malted other stuff. Yeah. And that's great. You just have to call it malted rye whiskey. And I don't understand why that's a problem for a lot of people.
Sure.
The entire point of the rules for American single malt are to free up the creativity of the American distiller. And so usually when I see comments of, oh, it should be this, it should be that, it tends to come from people who don't actually make whiskey.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And so, That's, and it also tends to come from people that were not there from the day one either. And it tends to be a lot of people that are just kind of filling in their 2 cents after a decade of work by those of us who actually make whiskey.
Yeah.
People just kind of jump in and say what they think it should be without having had any participation in the work to get it to the place where it is.
That's fair. I mean, I will admit most people I've talked to have been either online or just in my space. They're like, well, it should be X, Y, Z. So
yeah, I'm aware.
That's a good, I know you are. I appreciate your answer. and your work.
Because those of us who make whiskey are trying to make sure the customer gets what the customer wants.
Right.
And especially when you're talking about small batch craft American whiskey or craft American single malt, I'm unaware of anybody in my shoes that is price competitive with some of the bigger names. So if you're asking somebody to pay a lot of money for the product that you make, I believe that they are entitled to get what they think they're getting.
Sure. That's fair.
And so if you're separating yourself with that 70, 80, $100 for that bottle, you are entitled to get what you think you're getting. And the only way to make sure that's true is by being open and honest and having integrity on the label. And if you have something that's called a single malt, the customer should not be required to have a material amount of education to understand what that means.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the whole point of having it to begin with, was the Scotch whiskey rules are different than the American whiskey rules.
Yes.
And so that is confusing to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's confusing to us who make it, but we're experts. The consumer should not be required to be an expert to consume your product.
I agree with that. It's a good way to put it. And I know for the longest time, especially because the category hasn't been legally defined until what's becoming now, but the idea for Scotch drinkers was that it's an American copy of Scotch. It's an American copy of a Japanese whiskey. It's an American copy of, and I don't necessarily agree with that because American climate and things that we do with it's so different.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the malted chocolatey flavors that come from malted barley. So I appreciate the boom in the market because, I mean, bourbon's been king. Rye kind of started to come back a little bit, and it's still inching up. But then the American single malt is like, hey, we're here too. And I appreciate it because it gives me more options to drink.
Again, I think that we collectively are living in the golden age of whiskey.
Yeah.
Not just golden age of American whiskey or golden age of craft whiskey. It's just the golden age of whiskey where quality is sky high, selection is sky high. Yeah. You've got an untold wealth of whiskeys to choose from.
Right.
That's awesome for a drinker.
Very awesome. What's not awesome is my favorite scotches are going up every day. I see them at the store.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but I mean, at the same time, like if you truly love whiskey, the costs of whiskey are, to my mind, unethically low. Yeah, what it costs to produce whiskey is exceptional. And, even if you're talking about a very expensive bottle of whiskey, let's say it's $100 bottle of whiskey, a very expensive bottle of whiskey.
Sure.
My experience is that people will go out and drop $100 on a t-shirt or a pair of pants without flinching.
Yeah.
But a bottle of whiskey that somebody cares deeply about and required X number of years sitting in barrel and cost and expense and all the taxes that we pay that nobody else pays. I think whiskey is criminally underpriced. To get what you get, whiskey should be a lot more expensive.
Yeah. I mean, as a consumer, I'm like, no, but I agree with you because I can even imagine, my friends and I have talked about it down the road, maybe opening a distillery / cigar lounge and doing having fun. But the anxiety I get from talking to people like you, who is like, yeah, we do this, we put it in a barrel for 5 years and it's all that hard work and love and blood and sweat and tears. It's like, oh God. And then I'm going to sell the bottle for $30. Crap.
Well, that you're going to sell it for $30 after you sell it to a distributor. It's going to take 30 points, so you get the margin.
Yeah.
Never mind your FET taxes. Never mind all your insurance and the costs and the storage and the barrel and the grain and the water and the electricity and the rent and storing it for 3 years. And of course, that's all money out of your pocket that you're not going to see for a number of years.
Yeah.
So you could say that, a $100 bottle of whiskey is expensive, but there's another perspective that says it really isn't.
Sure.
And, if you really want and really value that variety of whiskeys, if you don't buy them, they go away. And I think if COVID taught us anything, if it's something you actually appreciate and care about, you need to go purchase it, because otherwise it leaves.
Right.
And you got to pay for it.
Yep.
Because it is a business. And yeah, man, I know it's not necessarily the most popular thing, but that is the reality, that people will, freak out over a $30, $40 bottle of whiskey, but won't flinch about, paying $20 for a pour at the bar.
Right.
For a 1 ounce pour, you're going to pay $20, or you won't flinch about paying $10 for a taco, or $80 for a steak, or, all these things that people don't flinch over.
Yeah.
But $45 for a bottle of whiskey?
Yeah.
I think it's a little weird, and people get spoiled by the low prices.
I think that's probably the best way, or most eloquent way I've heard that perspective touted, because I agree with you 100%. But I think the perception in the market is definitely changing. It has for the last 10 years as craft spirits and brewing have kind of exploded. But I think there's a perception that people prefer to have a product from someone like you with a story, who's doing it, not at this giant scalable level like Jack Daniel's or Jim Beam or Buffalo Trace. Mm-hmm. And not to shit on them, but they have a massive corporate market.
Right. I mean, we love all those companies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we love the heritage in particular. Of course, we love Heaven Hill.
Of course.
But we are talking about different scales, and the cost that hit us are going to be different than the cost that hit them. But that's also reality. Even take a Jack Daniel's or take a Heaven Hill. It costs a lot of money to make that bottle of
Absolutely.
Evan Williams that, it's $15 at the store, or $20 at the store, or 25, whatever it is. It takes an awful lot of investment to produce that whiskey at that price and get it to you, the consumer, at that store.
Right.
And it's a bargain. Like, whiskey is to my mind, whiskey is one of the biggest bargains in the market, because it should cost a hell of a lot more than it does.
My college days appreciated the $15 bottle of Old Granddad.
Sure. And Old Granddad's great whiskey.
It's great whiskey.
But it costs a lot of money to get it to you at that price.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. Yeah, no, and I mean, I think people too gravitate towards something that's, there's a lot of those buzzwords on bottles nowadays with like, handcrafted, specially made, all these little things that don't really mean much, but people like that it's a local place that is in a unique looking bottle. If I'm visiting Chicago and I see Few, I know it's made here, I'm going to buy it, rather than having that, that other, I'm just going to buy another bottle of Jack Daniel's. And I think there's a premium that comes with that. And I'm kind of curious if the market changes as it keeps going and craft spirits keeps blowing up, if you're able to sell at a premium and say, well, listen, we're not the big boys, but we made this. It's a 7 or 8 year old, whatever, and it's made here, and I don't have that many of them. $100. Would the market still like it? And I think it's going that direction.
No, I mean, I think fundamentally people are going to buy what they value. And
That's
if people
fair.
if people value that at $100, they will.
Yeah.
Here at Few, we've always taken great strides to make sure that we are price competitive, and we shrink our margins to make sure that we are, we are affordable. Are we going to be price competitive with Old Granddad? No, we're not. But I mean, if you look at what we do, Few should cost a lot more.
Sure.
And so, like, will craft spirits continue to grow? I don't know, man. We'll see. There's certainly a lot of price pressure coming in the market.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens in the next 10, 15 years, because it's been in my lifetime that this has just blown up. Craft brewing is there too. So it's kind of fun to see. It gives me more options to drink.
Yeah. I mean, craft brewing is currently having some struggles based on the death of the IPA, but
which is weird.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Or they won't, in which case they won't be around.
Every brewer I've talked to said, oh yeah, we set out to make an IPA and it's number 5 or 6, and we never expected that. We made so much of it. We thought it was going to sell out. It's just a weird market.
There's too many IPAs in the market.
Yep. So, well, what do we got here? Because I know we're probably getting thirsty. I want to cheers you to hard work, but tell me about your product.
Oh, I just kind of grabbed a couple of bottles. We've got our Few Spirits Immortal Rye. I think this is our bottled and bond bourbon, and our core straight rye.
Okay.
So just kind of 3 bottles that were within reach, if you will.
That works.
So I mean, what do you want? Take your pick. What do you want to try first?
Well, how should I start? Should I do?
Let's start with the bourbon, because the other 2 are kind of related. So
okay.
Bottled and bond bourbon.
Love it.
Sorry, I screwed on my elbow a couple months ago. Now, anytime I move it, it hurts.
Those weird motions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, bottled and bond, 100 proof, at least 4 years in barrel. Bourbon. Our mash bill is 70% corn, 20% rye, 10% malt, and we use a Belgian beer yeast for the ferment. So you get the flavors that I'm always looking for are going to be cinnamon, spice, and tart cherry. House style is cinnamon and tart cherry because I like cinnamon and tart cherry.
I love it.
And so should carry a lot of 100 proof is going to carry a lot of pop.
Yeah.
And fantastic bourbon.
Awesome. Well, cheers. I appreciate it.
Yeah, lots of great cinnamon.
Oh yeah,
tart cherry,
cinnamon bomb.
Yeah, big spicy, full flavored.
Oh, that's good. So, bottle and bond.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a calculated reason for it? Just because you wanted to do it? Because it's kind of weird now. I've seen a lot of bottle and bonds come back because it kind of has that tradition, right? Is there? I mean, I'm always curious at decisions being made as like, well, we're going to release a bourbon that's 80 proof versus bottle and bond versus a barrel strength. Everyone's doing barrel strength now. So is it just a market thing, or would you wanted to release it because you love bottle and bond? I'm just curious.
Certainly, bottled and bond has been a little bit of a buzzword in the whiskey community for a while.
That's why I ask.
And so the market wants something called bottled and bond, so we delivered something called bottled and bond to the market.
Easy answer. Good.
It's fundamentally no different than our core bourbon, other than 100 proof versus 93.
Right.
And everything is from the same 6-month period. So your blending hands are tied as a producer, as well as your basically just it ties your hands. You can't be super creative with a bottled and bond because it all has to be in that same 6-month period, and it all has to be at 100 proof. So a couple of the ways that you have to create or innovate new products are gone if you're going to do a bottled and bond.
Hey y'all, Alan Kogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedcombos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback or go over to our YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Is it still like the yesteryears where the government man has a key to your place and they come and inspect and all that stuff, or is it much more lax?
That ended a long time ago.
I thought so.
Yeah, the whole I hear a bunch of people get really excited about, it's in a bonded warehouse.
Yeah.
There isn't a single drop of alcohol in the United States that is not in a bonded warehouse.
Right.
Because if it's not in a bonded warehouse, you owe tax on it immediately. So there isn't a single drop of alcohol anywhere in the country that isn't being currently offered for sale.
Yeah.
That's not in a bonded warehouse.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. You think of like that. Oh yeah, this is our bonded area. The government comes in with a key and checks our stuff every once in a while. Like that's
no. I mean, they have knock rights. They could knock on the door and they can inspect.
Sure,
but it's not like they have the lock on the parrot anymore.
Yeah, right.
No, I mean, they have knock rights, and certainly we do everything above board. We're not hiding anything.
Yeah, sure.
But the concept that, it's in a bonded warehouse and that makes it special is a little bit confused.
Yeah. That's like that old, pre-prohibition era. That's like a romancing the old alcohol industry of coming in. I don't know.
Yeah,
I like the government out of my alcohol.
Yeah, marketers love to talk about that sort of stuff.
Cool. Well, that bourbon's great.
Yeah.
I love a bottle and bond because the higher the proof, the more flavor to me.
Sure.
I talked to someone a while ago and they said something I want to get on a t-shirt, that alcohol is a vehicle for flavor.
Certainly to an extent, yes.
I don't know if the science is, but thank you.
And then this is our core rye. So 93 proof, which is our core proof, which is where I think the whiskey drinks best.
Yep.
Mash bill is 70% rye, 20% corn, 10% malt, and a French wine yeast for the ferment. Oh. So on the rye, what we're typically looking for is a little bit of tart cherry and cinnamon. So I think it's certainly a lot of spice. It is a rye whiskey, but I think you get a lot more fruit. Nice pepper, but really nice and fruity. Big spice,
but it's on the back, and it's a lot sweeter than that bourbon, which is interesting.
Yeah, we get a lot of people think that our rye drinks like a bourbon and our bourbon drinks like a rye.
Yeah,
and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
we're always trying to find something new, right? At the end of the day, the world's worst sales pitch is try a few spirits. It tastes just like Evan Williams, and it's only $20 more. It's a terrible sales pitch.
Yeah.
You don't taste anything like Evan Williams.
No.
And that's okay because Evan Williams is great whiskey.
Sure.
But if you like Evan Williams, just drink Evan Williams because it's really freaking good.
Yeah.
If you like Elijah Craig, drink Elijah Craig. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great whiskey.
Sure.
But if I can bring you something different, maybe you like mine better and you don't want to drink those. You want to drink mine.
Yeah. Is there any big player in the market that you kind of modeled or that you love to drink as a daily sipper that you kind of modeled? I shouldn't say modeled after, but you said this, I love this kind of what they're doing, and I'm going to try to make that my own thing.
I think every distillery has something great that they're doing that is worth emulating.
Sure.
I think that our very heavy focus on yeast and fermentation is probably echoing a little bit of like Four Roses, but that's not, when you say something like that, it sounds like you're taking away from the wonderful stuff that they're doing at like Heaven Hill. Like there's great stuff being done.
Yeah.
You just got to do it.
For sure. Yeah, this is good. That I would say it does drink like a bourbon. I mean, that's not, like you said, that's not a bad thing.
No,
it's interesting.
If you want to drink a 95% rye, by all means, go ahead. You want to drink 100% rye, go knock yourself out. There's great ryes out there that cover the gamut, but I don't think there's any rye out there that tastes like few spirits.
No, and I would agree with that. That's very good. What's your go-to? Is it rye or bourbon?
It depends on my mood. I go both ways.
It's kind of how I am too.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be kind of gun to my head. I'm a Scotch guy. I love Lafroig or Lagavulin. I love that peat smoke. As I've been doing this and talking to more people here in the United States, bourbon's been always my number 2, but bourbon and rye are coming back to my number 1 because there's more of them available.
Yeah, I know. It's always weird. People want to set up this, it's Scotch versus bourbon or bourbon versus Scotch or bourbon v rye, and I just find that whole concept a little weird because I like them all.
Right.
And the idea that you have to pick, this is my favorite. Okay. Why? Just enjoy good whiskey. And sometimes you want to drink bourbon. Sometimes you want to drink Scotch. Sometimes you want to drink everything. So it's just kind of just really kind of varies based on, what you want or what your mood is. I don't see any of this as being a battle between categories.
Well, how many Scotch distillers are using bourbon barrels to make their product?
Close to 100.
Yeah. So it's not, and also, the competition even here between craft distillers. We were at the convention, and I thought that was a pretty awesome show of community where you're not fighting with the guy down the street. It's kind of like, hey, we're doing this, you're doing that. That's pretty cool. Let's trade a bottle and see what we're tasting, and that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I love that sense of community with the craft industry. Maybe there are some probably people who aren't doing well in it, but everyone I've talked to have been like, yeah, gung-ho for the guy down the street. And I love that.
Like fundamentally, when you're a small business like all of us are, if I'm fighting somebody else to sell a bottle, we both lost. So that's just silly. To me, it's really much more about how can we both work with each other to make each other better? How can we build the size of the pie?
Right.
And if you look at Few, like when Few started, craft spirits was less than 1% of the market. And now Few is 1% of the market.
Yeah.
So like that's just the size of an increasing pie that is far more potent than me snaking a bottle sale over somebody else.
Right.
Like let's just all win. And that's also the way whiskey drinkers drink, right? You never find I shouldn't say you never, but you don't find a whole lot of whiskey drinkers that, oh, I only drink brand X.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any drinker out there that only drinks few. I just want to be one of the few that's in your rotation.
Sure. That's actually good. That's a good tagline right there. I want to be one of the few. Yeah. You did that on purpose.
I am a dad. What can I say?
Cool. Well, what's this one?
And so this last one is what we call our Immortal Rye.
Okay.
And it's kind of the same thing as our core rye. But as I'm sure you're aware, when you make whiskey, you mash it, ferment it, you distill it, you age it, put it in a barrel. And when it comes out of a barrel, you add water to bring it down to bottling strength, 93 or 100 or whatever you're bottling at.
Right.
For the Immortal Rye, which is our bottle, got the dragon on it, instead of using water, we use cold extracted oolong tea.
Oh.
And so we're playing around with different cutting or proofing liquids. And the Immortal Rye uses an oolong tea. And so you get all that spice that you get from the rye whiskey, but with the cold extracted tea, you get mango and honey and peach and dragon fruit, i.e. the dragon on the front.
Yeah.
You get all sorts of these really cool tropical / quote exotic fruits that are totally unexpected in whiskey.
Interesting.
And so I think it really brings new flavors into the world of what whiskey is, what whiskey can be.
And that's the same mash as the core rye.
It's the same whiskey.
And that's wildly different.
Wildly different.
That's interesting. Are there any TTB rule or weird laws they have to explain that this is what we're proving down with or disclose?
Yeah, it goes pretty simple because we put right there on the front label, rye whiskey with 8 Immortals tea.
Okay.
So it's hard to, it's like, I don't know how to be more clear with what we're doing than putting it right on the front label because it says rye whiskey with 8 Immortals tea.
Yeah. So you're good.
I don't know what to say other than that. I mean, strictly speaking, it's no longer a rye whiskey. That's what
I was going to ask.
Legally becomes something called a distilled spirit specialty or DSS.
Yeah.
But it's whiskey with tea and it says it right on the front. We do get a lot of people who are upset, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, we do actually have the technology. We just don't use water. We use tea. We actually can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not whiskey anymore. I'm like, oh, I know. It's exactly why we say it's rye whiskey with tea right there in the front.
Yeah.
So that you're not confused. Well, you can't do that. No, we can. But you can't call it whiskey. And we don't. But you can't do that. Well, we can. You just can't call it whiskey. And that's why we don't call it whiskey. And you can just see people go in these circular arguments. They can't wrap their heads around, oh, maybe if I just taste it, maybe I will like it. And if I don't like it, maybe the best thing to do is not drink it again.
Yeah.
But no, they want to lecture me about what the rules are, what the laws are, or what I can or can't do. And I'm always like, well, no, I can do whatever I want.
Yes, you can.
I just can't call it whiskey, which is why I don't.
That is one thing that I've been surprised at. As with everything, especially with the advent of social media and our hyper connectivity, there are so many toxic whiskey drinkers that have an opinion, who want to lecture someone like you who works in the business and does what you do. You know what you're doing. And I mean, that's one thing I try to avoid with what I'm doing here is I just want to talk to you and share your story and know who you are. I'm not going to get on and sit here and go, a few spirit. I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a billion who do.
Oh, more.
And it's wild to watch because you go from different spaces. Like it's like everything's political, even whiskey. What the hell's going on? Just drink it, and if you don't like it, shut up.
Or just drink something else.
Or just drink something else.
People, it's just this weird, I don't know, it's this weird thing where people want to impress other people with how cool they are, or how sophisticated they are. And I don't get it, because to me, it's just kind of the opposite. Like, hey, that's cool, man. Just drink what you like. If you don't like few, cool, man. I'll drink what I like, and you drink what you like, and let's hang out and tell some bad jokes.
Yeah.
Because that's, to me, what whiskey's for, is for hanging out and bringing people together.
100%.
And if somebody else wants to divide people based on, oh, well, I'm a bourbon drinker, I could never drink scotch, or I only drink this kind of bourbon, or I drink that kind of bourbon. Okay, cool. We probably aren't going to hang out, man, because I just want to hang out. I just want to be chill. This is what I do. This is what I care about. If you care about something else, cool, man.
That's what it's about. I love it.
But that's, to me, just hang out and be cool.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But part of what you're doing with adding the tea, I shouldn't say adding the tea. That's probably rudimentary to say, but using the tea to proof down the whiskey. Was that something you just stumbled upon, or was that kind of just like, hey, it's an idea? Because one of the things I've heard a lot of people like yourself, around a campfire drinking whiskey and tasting things, like, what if we did this? And then you do it. It's like, oh, this is great. Is that how that turned out?
Kind of. I mean, we started off by doing working with coffee, because I'm a pretty intense coffee drinker personally.
Okay.
It's like we've got a bourbon that we call the cold cut bourbon, which is our bourbon brought down to proof with cold brew coffee.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was probably our third or fourth iteration of trying to combine coffee and spirit and trying to find something that was really cool and interesting and different and delicious and, all these things. We tried a bunch of different things, and we released a bunch of them, and they're all kind of good. But it wasn't really compelling, maybe. Or, it's easy to go out there and say, oh, I'm going to create this new whiskey. And it's easy to get a whiskey drinker to try the brand new whiskey. All you got to do is tell them there's only 50 bottles of it in the world. Yeah. And they're going to try it. They're going to tell you how awesome it is.
I'm guilty of that sometimes.
Because they can't get it. People just try it, and that's great. And they can tell their friends, oh, yeah, I tried that. It was all right. Oh, it was cool. Oh, it was fucking great. Whatever it is, whatever they think is going to impress their friends based on on this whiskey they tried.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of those. Like, it's easy to make that whiskey.
Sure.
It's really hard to make a whiskey that is going to be compelling and make that whiskey drinker come back and try it again or buy a bottle.
Buy a bottle, right.
Everybody wants to try the whiskey at Whiskey Fest. Oh, I tried it. Yeah, it was cool. That was great. That kind of sucked. Again, whatever it is that they feel about it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But creating and innovating and creating a whiskey that people want to come back to, that's the key.
Yeah. Have you found that to be probably a roller coaster, right? Sometimes it's easier if you have a good product that you've made that you love, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. This will be great to put on the shelf. And then I'm sure you found it where it's like, yeah, but people aren't buying it, so what do we do?
I think it cuts both ways. You know, it's there's an awful lot of opportunity to create and make new stuff in whiskey, and I think that's the joy of it. And sometimes you might think that people are going to react one way and they don't. Or, and it can cut both ways, right? Like, oh, I didn't think this is all that great, but people seem to love it. Or you can say, I think this is great, and people don't seem to love it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's kind of what being the entrepreneur is about, is I believe in this. And fundamentally, like on the cutting, like on the Immortal Rye, like I talk about the Immortal Rye, I don't know, 6 days a week, probably.
Sure.
I tell the story about what it is or what this or that. If I didn't think it was actually legitimately cool and delicious, I couldn't do it just because I just don't have the gumption.
That's fair. And and going back to what you said earlier in our conversation, is that you're not going to make something you're not going to like.
Right. If I don't like it, I'm just not going to make it.
Right.
Like, it's not true. That's like trying to chase after a dollar. And the more you chase after dollars, the fewer dollars you get.
Right. Yeah. Is the Immortal Rye I don't want to say core. Is it an offering you'll always have now? Or
we see the Immortal Rye as one of our core products for sure.
That's awesome. Tell me about any specialties you've done or anything coming up, anything that has been experimental one-offs that you can't wait to share, or?
We've always got cool, innovative products that are out there. We just re-released the Alice in Chains collaboration, which I think is really fun. Currently available on our DTC at our quote website.
Yep.
You've got another rock band collaboration coming out in about 3 weeks or so. May 1st. I don't know what today is though.
April 7th.
So it's coming out in call it 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So that'll be, we're really excited about that. That'll be really fun. We've always got, those kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I've got raging ADD, and so
you too.
Yeah, one of the ways I deal with it is I experiment and make new stuff, and then you get to go back and continue making bourbon and rye, which is what pays for the lights and pays for the rent and pays for the pizza my kids eat and all that.
I love it. Have you found yourself been able to like squirrel away a barrel? Like you made this is a good batch. I'm going to put this barrel away for X number of years just because I want to see what happens to it. It might be a special edition down the road. I know sometimes craft distillers have limited space and time and resources, but once in a while a barrel gets snuck away for a little bit. Have you been able to do that?
I mean, we're always playing around and trying to do different stuff. I don't really fundamentally believe in age statements, so I don't really put much cotton into, oh, I'm going to stick this away for 10 years or whatever. I don't really believe in that. Whiskey is a lot more than age.
Yes.
And so while it's very easy for people who don't really understand whiskey to say things like, oh, I like 6 year, I like 8 year, I like 10 year. Yeah, I like that. It's kind of the providing of information without actually saying anything.
Yeah.
Certainly age is important, but I would not call it the most important thing in any whiskey. So, I mean, do we have stuff that's been sitting down for a while? Sure. But I don't really cotton to age statements very much.
I appreciate that answer a lot because there's people who I've talked to, not on this, and I won't name drop, but people who are like, oh, we're tied to a 6 year. 6 years is just great. 8 years is just great. But the market, for whatever reason, looks at a number and says, oh, this is better.
The market looks at it because, for the most part, a lot of people that come between the distiller and the drinker don't actually know what they're doing.
Right.
And so it's very easy for a rep to go, oh, this is X, therefore it's better than Y.
Yep.
Because it's a number, and then the purchaser, who probably doesn't necessarily know, or at least historically, maybe didn't know much more than the rep goes, oh, well, obviously an 8 is better than a 6 because it's got an 8. It's a bigger number, therefore it's better. And I just don't think any of that's true. Like, certainly age is important. You can't pretend that, time in a barrel is not relevant to the quality of a whiskey.
Of course.
But too much time in a barrel is detrimental to a whiskey. And so you get an awful lot of people that think over-aged whiskeys are great, when instead, maybe they're not quite as good as people think they are.
Well, I was at a bar in, it was just outside of Louisville. We were on our way to Louisville, but they had a Michter's 25. Now Michter's makes some good stuff. I love their sour mash. I will always buy a bottle of that. But Michter's 25, and it was like $1,000 a pour. And I knew the rep who worked at the bar, and he just poured a half shot of it for the three of us who were there to try it. I tasted like wood. It was just a barrel. And it's funny because that bottle goes for how much? Probably $5,000, just because the way that, hey, it's specialty, it's whatever.
No, and there's only, 10 bottles left in the barrel. And so you got to pay for all of the whiskey that went in the barrel. You got to pay for the barrel. You got to pay for all that time. You got to pay for storage, insurance, tax. You got to pay for all of that. So, very old whiskey is very expensive, but that does not necessarily mean that it's better.
Right.
Maybe just better for people that really like the taste of oak.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is fine. If that's what you like, God bless.
That's very true. And I've also learned quite a bit about, angel share from state to state, because, Texas is having a tough time with that. Holy crap. Denver has, I was talking to Stranahan's. Their angel share is like 40%. That's insane. Which stands to reason, goes back to your point, that there's a little bit of an undervalue on the bottles that you're making because there's quite a bit of resources being pumped into it.
Right. So you've got 50 gallons, you put 53 gallons of whiskey into a barrel. At the end of aging or maturation, however long that is, let's say you lost 40%. Let's just call it 50 for easy math because I'm not real bright. So you got 26 gallons of whiskey left. Well, when you sell those 26 gallons of whiskey, those 26 gallons of whiskey have to pay for the 20, whatever the math is. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Whatever, you got to pay for all that whiskey that you made and disappeared into the air.
Yeah.
And you got to pay for the barrel. You got to pay for the storage. You got to pay for the rent. And you got to pay for the grain for all those other barrels, all those other gallons that all disappeared into the air.
It adds up.
And this stuff adds up. Again, whiskey is massively underpriced in reality.
Yeah. Hey, I couldn't agree more. Have you found a sweet spot for aging? I know it's not that important, which is good, but I've had some great 6-month-old whiskey, and and I've had some great 4-year-old whiskey.
I think it just depends on the whiskey itself, and it depends on what you're looking for, and it depends on house style. And if you want something that tastes like a barrel, well, then it's going to have to be in a barrel for a longer time.
Yep.
And it depends on where and how you make your cuts. Are you cutting early? Are you cutting late?
Right.
Especially on your tails cut. Like, if you're cutting late and harvesting early, well, you might have some problems. But if you're cutting early and harvesting late, you also might have some problems there too.
Yeah.
So to me, it's really about the name on the top of the, it's about the name few more so than
the number
6, 8, 12, 4, 6 months. Like, these are the things that matter. And it's like, it all goes into how the artist wants to create their whiskey. And my art here at Few is going to be different than Stranahan's art.
Yes.
Even if they made bourbon, they get rid of those differences, but
they might one day.
But you know what I mean? Like, my art is going to be different than theirs.
Yep.
And that's not critiquing them. That's the whole damn point of there being multiple distilleries.
Yes.
My art is different than theirs.
Yes.
You might like my art better than theirs. You might like their art better than mine.
Yep.
That's okay. As long as you're cool about it, let's have a drink and have a good time. We'll sit around a fire and...
Well, and one of the beautiful things, too, is that if you were to give your exact mash bill, your exact process, your exact numbers to another distillery at another place, and they put them in the barrel the same time you do, it would still taste different.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that difference, that variable when it comes to craft distillers, because that variation gives a difference in the market,
right,
which helps everybody.
Everything's different. Like I told you my mash bill. There's no secret. I even told you the kind of yeast I use.
I've talked to people who won't share their mash bill.
Oh,
it's hilarious.
And if that's the way you want to do it, again, I'm not throwing stones at anybody.
Yeah.
I can tell you my recipe, and you're not going to be able to make my whiskey.
Right. Yeah.
So who cares?
Right.
Somebody else cares? Cool, man. Let's have a drink.
I love it, and I love that you said art, because it is an artistry, right. and you're doing some awesome stuff. But
whiskey is art.
It absolutely is,
and that's why people like some and won't like others.
Right.
It's the whole damn point.
It is. I'm curious, is there anything that you haven't made yet that you have been, it's on your whiteboard somewhere that says, at some point I want to do this. This is what I've been jonesing for. We haven't had the time for it or the resources for it. Is there something in the back of your mind that says, this is going to be fun?
No, I mean, I'm currently planning out a whiskey I want to make at some point this year, but
okay.
I haven't made it yet because I haven't decided exactly what it is yet.
Okay.
I've got a direction. I'm just kind of chewing on it. Like, I've got some ideas. I know a directional way I'm going with it.
Okay.
But I haven't decided, so therefore I haven't made it yet.
Nice.
If something I want to do, I'm going to do it.
That's why I like you guys.
And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then we don't sell it. And we figure out what we didn't like about it or what went wrong with it. Maybe it was a bad idea. Maybe it was a good idea, poorly implemented. Maybe it was a great idea, poorly implemented. Maybe it was a terrible idea, incredibly well implemented. But it was still just a bad idea. You just always, whenever you create something, you kind of go back. All right, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we learn so that in the future we know better, so that we can better implement our vision of what we want this to be?
Sure.
And even when we're making new whiskeys, it's always like, okay, well, what do you want to make? Oh, I want to make a rye whiskey. Cool. What kind of a rye whiskey do you want to make? What do you want it to taste like? Why is it going to be cool?
Yeah.
Why is it going to be fun? Are you just doing it because you think the market wants a rye whiskey? Because that's boring.
Yeah.
Are you doing it because you've got something new to say? We can push rye whiskey in a new direction, or have flavors that people haven't seen before in a rye whiskey, or what's going to make this rye whiskey you want to make cool?
It's a good point. Just making things just for the sake of making it probably doesn't have that same.
It's boring too.
Yeah.
And as the guy who's gonna have to sit there and talk about it day in, day out for years on end, if I don't think it's cool, fuck it, man. I don't have enough. I don't have the heart to do it, man. If I don't think it's cool, I'm not going to pretend.
Right. No, that's fair. I mean, I appreciate the fact that your joy is the experimentation and the fun and the banking and the creativity and the artistry. That means that you care about the product. And that means the product is going to be good.
got my name on every bottle. It better be good.
Well, yeah, I love it. But, well, I appreciate what you're doing here. I appreciate what you do in the American single malt space, too. I think that's a really cool, thing that's happening in the whiskey industry that's long time coming. And I appreciate that.
No, and it is important. Like I said, the consumer needs to get what they think they're getting.
Yes.
If they don't, then that's on us as an industry for fooling them, and that ain't cool.
No, not at all. And I've had a few before. You guys have made great stuff. You have all the accolades. I've heard about you from people all over the United States. I need to find an ABC store that sells few.
We are in Virginia. It is available.
Yeah, I know you are. I did, but the two stores that are near me don't
ask for my name again. That's always the best way to get few. There is when you go in and customers ask for it. The clerks are going to get it eventually.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're not there for themselves either. They're there to sell products.
Yep.
And if they don't have a product that people want to buy, they're going to go get that product that people want to buy.
Right. I found one guy in it's an ABC store attached to a 7-Eleven, and he has a friend who's a Scotch distributor, and he's been able to get a bunch of like Edredor and things that don't really come to the market that often. So I'll talk to him. He sounds like a pretty cool guy.
It's all there, or across the border into DC.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that, I don't want to go on a tangent, but DC marks things up like crazy because they know that if you get that one special edition Ardbeg or that one special edition from some Virginia distillery or whatever, that it's going to sell MSRP to the ABC. In DC, they'll mark it up 25-30% because they know people are going to come across the border to get it. I'm moving to North Carolina in the next 2 months, so I don't care.
Well, get ready for even less selection then.
Yes, but
the only alcohol monopoly on the planet that loses money. Welcome to North Carolina.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware. I have more space and I have a kid, so I'm.
I got 2 kids in North Carolina.
So, well, hey, Paul, I appreciate what you do here and the
Thanks.
artistry. I love your stuff and I love what you're doing. Keep it up, and I look forward to seeing what's coming from you in the future.
Thanks for coming. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!